Hey guys, it's Melissa here from melissaoatman.com. Welcome to Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness, a daily podcast devoted to spirituality and self help. If you're new, I want to welcome you. If you're returning, welcome back. So today we have a special guest with us. We have Miss Nicole Ananda, who is a healer, a coach, so many different things rolled up into one. And so we are just going to dive in today and really talk about how she works with people to help them really tap into their full potential. So welcome today, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have a fellow healer on today. This is awesome. So, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about you and then what it is that you do to really work with people?
Yeah, thank you. I really empower the awakened woman. I tend to work with women, the awakened woman to unleash her passions, her power, and her purpose. And what that means is diving deep into inner child work, into your past, and like many coaches, really breaking through some of those limiting beliefs and stepping and reclaiming your power, stepping into your power, reclaiming your power, your confidence. Really, everything to me is about energy healing and energy work. Some might say energy medicine, which I love. And that is clearing the pathways, the energetic pathways to becoming more in alignment. And I say like more alignment with your soul's purpose. And how do we get more women on the planet living in their soul's purpose, right? That's really my passion. So yeah, that's my mission here on the planet, awakening more and more women and having them step forward and really guide themselves to their soul.
I think that is such a powerful and amazing purpose to have because we really need more of that. I think there's so many women out there who are afraid to really step outside their comfort zone and really dive deep to understand who they really could be if they just had the courage to try. So that's awesome that you do that. So, how do you do that? How do you take someone who may be sitting there going, yeah, I'm just feeling kind of meh about life and it's not exciting. So, what do you do to help somebody who may be thinking that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I feel like this is my purpose because I was that person, right, who didn't really understand, like, how do I step into my soul's purpose? We grow up in society and it's very patriarchal and masculine. And in learning energy work as a yogi, I've been a yogi for 13 years as a teacher trainer and a yoga teacher. I really started to learn about subtle body energy and about what it means to be feminine. And when I learned the information, I thought, wow, I'm actually really masculine. And I know many, many women who felt the same way because that's how we've been taught and that's what society asks for, which is a lot of competition and stepping over and just all these things that aren't very feminine. And so what I learned through that process of self-discovery was how to drop in and how to slow down, how to listen, how to be more creative, how to be okay with trusting the unknown. And so when a woman is feeling resistant in her life, I feel like she's holding on. She's really holding on to the past and what maybe society has instructed her to do, or what her parental situation was, or the myriad of things environmentally that we're up against throughout our lives. So I want women to really dive into the beginning of the chakra system. I actually teach through the energetics of the chakra system to their root, like their inner child, how they were birthed into the world. What was their caretaking like? The mother story, the father story, their relationship. And I take people on a journey through that chakra system because it's really the blueprint. It's like your unique blueprint to your life. And some might think that's just energy, but it's all of our life. It's right, physical, energetic, emotional, mental. And when we become conscious of that information, if we haven't worked with that, it's mind blowing, really, because you start to see that you've been living in almost the lives of other people or under the influence of something else. It's like you've been asleep. And then you recognize, wow, that's where I've been. That's why I feel resistant. I'm really not living my particular unique full potential. I'm living at the whim of all these external circumstances, forces, etc. And so it's like bridging the gap, right, between the inner child and the subconscious mind and emotions, and finding the higher mind or the higher consciousness, and creating, yeah, like a bridge. I always think of like a rainbow, like this rainbow light body bridge to where you're going, and accessing that higher potential within oneself.
That's awesome. And I love that you use the chakras too, because I don't think many people know enough about them, or even when you have chakras that are out of alignment, and when how many, it causes so many different physical and emotional symptoms. And I don't think people even realize that, but using them to really talk about your path. Now, that is something I've never really dived into before. And I think that that is an interesting
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty unique. And I feel like I got blessed with that information because as a woman who was working in the corporate world for 15 years, I used to work in advertising and marketing. I had a very linear Western mindset. And then when I became a yogi, I kind of got really sucked in and went down the rabbit hole with it, but I loved it, this esoteric knowledge. And I thought, wow, they're not really speaking to one another, the Western mind and the Eastern mind. And it wasn't until, I would say, when I got introduced to like Deepak Chopra and some of the luminaries that have done this so well of bridging Western and Eastern, I started to realize that I could do the same thing. I could access that information and look at the the chakra system as a way, as a blueprint for our life. But it took me years. I mean, I studied the chakra system for like 10 years before this actually came to me, where I really understood it to that level of, because it's our narratives, right? It's our narratives. And it, yeah, it came together that way. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. If we learned this stuff when we were kids, or
Yeah.
if parents learned this in relationship to their children, it would make a real big difference, because you would start to understand what they're learning about themselves through that system. Like root chakra is about the mother, sacral chakra is about how the parents relate to each other or to the father. And then third chakra is like, how do you identify yourself in the world? How are you confident? Are you not? Do you have support? Do you not? Do you know your gifts? Do you not? And then like really understanding those first couple of chakras as you're developing would, and having parents that could, let's say, support that would be really interesting. And then using that to come into like the heart's really about service, and coming into connection with your tribe and your community, and then opening your voice, and finding ways of speaking the truth and your authentic self, and honesty. And it's like, if our families all understood that, they could support that, right? Like right now my son's 5, and he's coming into his voice, and he really is, he's learning how to speak up for himself when kids are bullying at school, or things like that, or pushing. They're not really bullying at 5, they're just kind of exploring their bodies. But it's like, can you open your voice and tell them that you don't like that thing? And that's going to really help him with his authentic voice, right?
Yeah.
Standing up for himself. And then eventually connecting to our intuition, honoring those gifts of intuition, honoring that connection to meditation and imagination, and then eventually to that cosmic kind of connection of the seventh chakra. But our whole system is really developed between 0, they'll say, and 8. So those formative years of development, there's so much information that we're absorbing, right? We're like little sponges just taking it all in. But that programming that resides there is really what holds us back too in the future, if we're not resolved with our emotions or our healing or our trauma, or whatever it is that comes up during those years.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that you bring it up that people, they're not living their authentic, true lives. And I think you're so right. That is the number one thing that I see with people is they're living someone else's idea of what their life should look like. And it comes from all of the programming, from the conditioning, from when you were raised, what society says. And your point about society being more masculine is so right on too. And what I think we're seeing now is this huge shift in energies. So we're moving away from the masculine and more people are moving into the feminine, which I think is, it's pretty interesting to watch actually. And so I think that what you're doing is really interesting in helping people to kind of move away from that masculinity and
Mhm.
move more toward the femininity, which is creating and, connecting to Mother Earth and all of those things and being more collaborative and cooperative with people, which is that's an awesome thing. I think so many of us need to be doing that more. And I love that you're helping people step into their purpose because I feel like so many people, myself included, we didn't know what our purpose was or step into it when we first got out of high school, and they're like, go to college, do what you want to do. And most of us picked a career path that our parents were like, oh, this is what you should do, or at least I did. And I ended up changing it several times until finally finding what I'm doing now. So I think that's interesting. And I love that you're helping women to find their purpose.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just like you, I mean, I was told what to do, and then I thought that's what you did, be the good, dutiful daughter and do what everyone's telling you. But you've probably had this experience too. It's just really unsatisfying, right? So we're kind of going through the motions and wondering why nothing's really clicking. We might even have success, but then be unhappy. And so really the quest was like, how do I find happiness and fulfill my desires? And then I recognized, desire and pleasure and sensuality, these are very feminine qualities. And the masculine energy is very linear. And it's a beautiful dance, and nothing wrong with the masculine. Obviously, we need that container and we want that energy of action. But yeah, there's that missing component of the feminine power, which is very much about intuition. And I love that we're kind of changing the guards of energy and coming into that feminine empowerment, because for so long we've been suppressing our voice, and we might have fear that if we say the wrong thing we'll be right ridiculed or rejected, or all the different kinds of shadowy, I call it the victim or the martyr, or even we're blaming and shaming because we feel upset and rageful, right, for being suppressed or oppressed. A lot of that kind of shadowy energy. Or the other one, the other shadow that I like to talk about is the rescuer. We're rescuing everybody. We're doing all of it, right? Women will do all of it and kind of let others be enabled, or just sit back and not do because we got it all, and that is really hurtful to our systems. And that's why there's so many women that are just exhausted, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, how do I do all of this stuff? It's so crazy. But it's really boils down to our responsibility at this point to heal that. And so much is about healing, right? Because healing is such a feminine quality. So
Yeah.
I love that we get to do all this healing work right now on the planet.
I know. It's so nice to finally see a lot of people, I think, waking up to, oh, you know what? Maybe what I grew up with, maybe what I was taught wasn't really the way things should be, and trying to really look at that. I think, I teach high school too, and I see that every day that I've always said this the young people, so many people will say, oh my gosh, we're in so much trouble. Look at the future generations, like millennials, and to me, I'm the opposite. I really see a lot of really awesome qualities in the young people that are, becoming adults because they're more inclusive. To me, the young adults that I work with, they're more inclusive, they're more open minded, and very creative, like thinking outside of the box. So I'm very hopeful. I know not everybody is, but I'm very hopeful about the new energies that are coming in.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful, and just to support them, right? I mean, if I think in terms of spirituality, I mean, you were talking about spirituality earlier. You know, if we're really being spiritual, the younger kids are closer, if you will, to spirit, right? Because they're less conditioned. And so we want to be listening to them. We want to be listening to their creativity and what they have to say. And if we're evolving as human beings, as a species, they're going to be smarter than us in
Yeah.
many ways, right? We're just conditioning them to live here. But we've kind of screwed up the earth, you know. We've really not paid attention to our source connection with the planet. We've separated ourselves in so many ways and isolated ourselves. And I mean, we're still tribally wired from what I'm understanding about our brains, and neurology is like, the neuroscience says we still got the same brain. So if we're still tribally wired, that's why it's not working, right? We're isolating and moving into boxes and little cars, and this is my property, and that's, you know, all this infighting and within the species. And I do see that, what you're seeing from like babysitters, let's say, over my kid. It's like they're like, yeah, let's meet up with other people, let's start a community. They're very open from what I'm seeing, and I think that's beautiful, and really needs to be rewarded and supported, you know?
Right, exactly. And I see so many young people going out and trying to make change too, like really real lasting change. Even, we saw in the last election kids going out and trying to get people to go vote, just to get out there and in the community. And in my school, there are a lot of different groups who are collecting things for nursing homes and, trying to do all of these service projects, which are not a requirement. I mean, it's not required for them to do, but they're just on their own, wanting to get out there and see how they can make things better and help. And that's very, very encouraging to me to see that. I think it's amazing.
Oh, so beautiful. I love that.
So I know that you delve a lot into spirituality with the work that you do, which is, that's what we kind of talk about a lot on my podcast, because I've talked to many of my listeners, and we all kind of have similar stories in that many of us were raised in a certain religion and then didn't really agree with, all of the tenets of that religion, and felt like it was very constricting, and just a lot of things for me growing up. I just thought, how can that be? Because it what didn't seem to be so community centered and accepting of everyone. And for me, that's why I really broke out and kind of sought my own information about spirituality, and went within to find what did I think was the truth. So
Mhm.
why don't you tell us a little bit about your own like spiritual journey and how that's kind of how you incorporate that with what you do?
Yeah, that's so great. I love that you asked that question because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And I grew up in a Catholic household with a mother who was actually an ex-nun. And so there were a lot of restrictions, rules. I was brought up with a lot of consequences and a lot of punishment, and often felt like things were always my fault. Like I couldn't do it right, or things that. So when I started to uncover and unpack what I call core wounding, which I'm sure many coaches do, it's like, what are those core wounds that you're still carrying around? A lot of them had to do with that religion and the way that I was brought up. I'm not good enough. I'm not, worthy. I'll never get it right. God is a punisher. And I had to develop my own sense, like you, of what is the authentic truth for me, and what is my relationship to spirit. What is God, and what is source. And it was really through yoga and then becoming a Reiki master and learning about energy and then diving into some of these ancient indigenous wisdoms. So I studied shamanism, shamanism for 10 years. And I went to the jungles of Peru and I drank ayahuasca and plant medicines and I did all sorts of spiritual journey work. And I had a Kundalini awakening actually in the jungle drinking plant medicines, and was just connected really to nature. It connected me to nature. And I found that spirituality was really all around us in every single present moment, every single breath, every single everything on this planet is God, is source, is energy. And so that became really my spirituality, was energy. Energy as source energy, energy as light, light body. We're all made, all sentient beings, of this energy, including the planet as a consciousness. And then I started to dive into, Deepak Chopra's work and some quantum physics work and epigenetics work, and I just like really explored. And I would say, to kind of go back to your question, I started to think like, how do I get people in connection with their own spirituality? And that to me was through energy. So it does go to mapping to some of my programs, which I was talking about, the chakra system, but also things like Reiki energy medicine, working with that for healing. And then eventually I got to breath work. And you'd think as a yogi, I'd know about breath work. And I did, like short breath work kriyas, but a lying down breath work practice. There's these practices now that people are coming into alignment with, that are called transformational breath work, or 3-part breath work, or clarity breath work. There's different ones. And people lie down for about 45 minutes, and you go through these breathing patterns with them. And what happens is it can it gets them to relax so deeply that it can eventually induce these incredible visions and connections, where people can go back, into their timeline, their past, heal things, see things, get literally like these downloaded images. And when I witnessed it, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then I was like, it's your breath, our source energy travels on the breath. So of course, like, this makes sense. Like, how did I not discover this before? So I got really into the breath work. And so now that's my primary practice with my clients, is doing coaching with them, getting to that emotional connection, understanding their trauma and what they're dealing with, and then literally putting them on my table, or I do it online as well, very much so, and having them do these breathwork practices. And through that experience, it amplifies and deepens the energy work, the Reiki work, and they're using their own life force. So they're starting to connect. They're creating that bridge between the inner child work, the past, the subconscious, and their higher mind. And I'm just seeing these really transformative results that I'm super jazzed about, because for me, it's a little less work, I got to be honest. As a healer, I feel like I'm just like letting them do what their body wants to do. And that the body's so freaking intelligent. It's like so amazing. So the body's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they're having these deep somatic energy releases and insights, real breakthroughs through that practice. And it's a pretty quick practice, like I said, 45 minutes. And they're like, whoa. And then they'll get off the table after our session and tell me all the things that have happened. And I'm like, whoa, that's spiritual, like, that's God, because it's infinite. I've never heard any experience be the same ever. It's always unique, and it's always exactly what they need. And that's not me, that's them. That's their connection to their spirit and to their higher spirit and to their connection to source energy. So it's like, woo, it's like miraculous. I love it.
Visions as they do it.
What's that?
They're they're seeing visions as they do this breath
They
work.
are. I mean, I've heard wild stories like, oh, I saw my whole lineage. I saw my grandmother who passed. I received this message. I saw my past. And like, I had somebody recently see a traumatic event that they had not uncovered, but they knew it was there, but they hadn't really connected to it because they were disassociative with it. And so real healing, and because it's your energy, it feels very safe, right? It's like you're in control. If you get to a place, it's not triggering deeper trauma. It's actually releasing the trauma, and allowing them to process it in real time. And that's like so powerful. So powerful. So yeah, so I'm loving this practice. And I want everybody to be able to do it. I'm like, it's your breath, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I know when I do Reiki work, also, sorry guys, the wind is blowing very strong and it's probably blowing leaves and my dogs bark at everything. So,
We welcome the dog energy, right? We love dogs. They're so great.
um, but when I do Reiki with my own clients, they will say that they've seen departed loved ones come to them while they're having the Reiki session, or they also have talked about getting visions when they have the Reiki session. So I can totally see how that would work if you're doing the breath work. And I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting. But it's amazing to me how you're doing it with trauma,
Yeah.
because that is something that is so prevalent right now. People, it's like everyone experiences trauma at some point. I just think everyone does. I always say this, but birth is traumatic, even if you don't remember your own birth. But you think about it, I mean, it's a pretty traumatic thing, going from being a light being with no gravity and to coming into this heavy, heavy earth. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who said he remembered telling his dad when he was like 12 years old, I hate it here. It's heavy, and it's restrictive. And he's like, I didn't know what it was like to be anywhere else. He said, I didn't have any memories of being anywhere else. He just said, I just knew I hated it here.
Mm,
And it was a very powerful statement because as a 12-year-old, he's not making anything up. But we remember that this feels very heavy. It feels very different than what we're used to. We're kind of, we think that, this is our permanent thing and heaven is like a short time thing, but it's actually the very opposite, of that. And so I think that a lot of people experience trauma here, and doing breath work to release that would be amazing. And that would be such a wonderful tool for people to be able to, because there's probably things they, as you said, don't even remember that are
right.
layered
Yeah,
in.
and the body remembers,
Yeah.
right? The body remembers, and that's I learned that through yoga because I would see in teacher trainings people fall apart after a big back bend, as an example. And as an energy healer, it's like we carry so much information in our bodies, and just the other day I was talking about this because we were talking, my friend was talking about like the layers of the body, and I was like, yeah, in yoga we learn about the koshas. This is very basic foundational information that you learn in teacher trainings, that the way that the Eastern philosophy of yoga is taught is that the physical body is just the last layer. It's the outer encasement, but everything else is like the Russian doll, those little Russian dolls, or the big doll, then the little doll, and the little doll, until you get to that tiny little doll, which is the causal body, which is the heart, which is your soul, or some people would say, and your karma, or samskaras. And so when we're feeling pain and ailments in our physical body, it's so much deeper than that, right? So as a Reiki practitioner, that's what we're always doing, is going below the surface of what we're being told. It's like, oh, I got this thing on my elbow, or I'm having trouble with, constipation. It's good to know the chakra system because we know, okay, there's an emotional component to it or an energetic component to it. And that's all stemming from, right, like our narratives, right, our emotional trauma, really. um, and of course there's acute injury, and I'm not disregarding that, and I'm not disregarding Western medicine. There's other things too, but the majority of pain and suffering is so much deeper than the physical body. And so these layers, and layers upon information, boil down to, I've never met anybody that doesn't have trauma of some sort. Just like you said, birth is absolutely traumatic. I mean, I'm running a women's group right now for postpartum moms, and the birth story. We just got to the birth stories. I'll let everybody share their birth story, and it was just constant tears because these birth stories were like literally like so freaking traumatic. I couldn't even believe it. I was like in shock. And as a culture, we don't talk about that stuff. It's like all the rainbows and unicorns, and we're supposed to have this perfect water birth with, all the things. And almost every woman in this group wanted a water birth, and they wanted, this perfection. and that's not what they got, and but there is a higher, I feel like there's definitely this higher divine plan and consciousness at play, and we're coming in with our own set of dharmic uh, plans, if you will, like our destiny, right? So our birth tells a lot about who we're going to be, what qualities we're going to have. If we fought during our birth, maybe we needed to learn those qualities in this lifetime, at this now, in this body. And so, yeah, the birth is the first trauma. And then there's many. Oh my God, do I hear stories all day long? Every single family has trauma. They're all different. And even if you're a great parent, it doesn't mean you're good for your kid. Your
Yeah.
kid has their own set of needs, desires, wants, plan, etc. And that may not be what they need. And so relying on a human mom or a human dad to fulfill all your needs is absolutely, you can't do that. It's impossible, right? So everybody's going to have their trauma, whether it's big trauma or small trauma. It's all trauma informed, as I say. And I really believe in, like, our light, though, who we are on a like cosmic level, is so much bigger than any trauma that we've ever suffered. This is a university, is what I say, like Earth University. Like, yeah, sometimes it sucks and it's dense and we don't want to be here, but we're evolving, and that's the point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything is a lesson. And, you talk about all of the traumas we carry with us from like birth to childhood. But if you believe in past lives, there's another whole set of traumas that you carry with you in your cellular memory. So we've got all of that going on too. And I think that people don't realize that. And so they do the work and they're like, why is this so hard? Why? I feel like I get a layer, I feel better, and then all of a sudden I don't feel good again. And yeah, it's in layers because it's so deep. It goes so deep that you have to keep doing the work in order to really get to all of it. It's kind of like, it feels like, if I can use an example, trying to keep a floor clean when you have dogs who shed. You clean it up one day, you turn around, you're like, I just swept the floor and now there's hair all over again. And so it's like you have to keep cleaning it up. That is what it feels like to do the work sometimes. Not that it has to be hard, but just that you have to keep doing it. Like, it is so important to continuously work at it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I love that. I've been thinking about that phrase, doing the work. It's a very popularized term in our field. And I keep thinking, is this something that we can reframe, like doing the work? Does it have to always be work? Because, and you've probably seen this with clients too. It's like we can get stuck sometimes in doing the work,
Mhm.
just like anything else. Like, I have to fix myself. There's something wrong with me. I need to fix more. And I agree with you that it's a constant evolution. Um, and could it be easy? And I think really what it boils down to is like surrendering, right? It's like, how much can we surrender, and can we just accept that that is part of our evolution, that we will be personally developing throughout the whole time that we're here, hopefully.
Yeah.
And that maybe that's the blessing. I feel like it gets a little bit easier. It gets
Oh, yeah.
easier.
Absolutely. I think it gets easier. It's just, there's a lot of people who, I'm not going to name any names, but people who just want to take magic pills to, I always get people who come to me like, well, I just want to feel better. So can you just do this and I'll feel better? And, I'll always say, like, no.
Right. Don't put all the eggs in
If
my basket.
I could develop a pill that just made you feel better, that I would love that because I would be rich. But no, I can't do that. It does get easier. I mean, I just want to encourage people who do want to improve themselves, and anyone who's listening to this podcast obviously does. It does get easier. But what I meant when I said you have to do the work is just that, you know, it's important to continuously improve upon the version of yourself because we can always be better. There will never be a point in time when I'll go, yeah, I'm good, I'm done, I'm perfect. We're not.
Right.
So it's
Right.
important to keep doing the work. But I like your idea of trying to call it something else because I think that when people hear the word work, we're immediately like, ah, and a reaction like, I don't want to do that. But
Right.
it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think about working out when most people hear I work out, it's like the same reaction, like, but I try to find things that are fun
Yeah.
and make it something you look forward to. Like, oh, well, I'm going to do a dance class because it's fun and it flies by because you're listening to awesome music. And before you know it, it's over and you've done something good for yourself. So, in the same way, when you work on yourself, it can be the same way. You can approach it in a this is going to be really good and come at it as a positive attitude because you are going to feel better afterwards. You will feel better.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think that was really wise what you were saying. And, having fun, making it playful. We really want to tap into what is playful for us because it's so different for everybody. And it's that, that pressure that people feel that makes them kind of rebellious and turn the other direction, right? So, what is it that they love to do? And then let that passion really drive, like you're saying, their development and their work. And that's a little bit like going back to like soul's purpose is what I also teach is how to tap into the things that you loved to do when you were a kid. What are those things that were really playful for you, that really jazzed you up, that you forgot about because you were told it was frivolous or didn't mean anything, or you'll never make any money doing that, or whatever that thing is, and start doing those things again. Because those are the ways that you creatively express yourself. And that is so much about becoming in alignment with that soul, which was your child, right? Your inner soul is your innocent little being inside of you that just got to play. Well, hopefully, I mean, not everybody got to play, but that wanted to play, that had that desire to like look at the earth as like this massive playground, like, wow, I'm here. Now I'm here. What do I do? There's so many things. It can be that fun too. And yes, you'll have the hard days, and yes, it will be work sometimes. But I think you hit the nail on the head with that statement of really having fun.
Yeah. I think as kids, at least for myself, I felt like I knew a lot more than sometimes I think I know now. But I feel like there was this inner wisdom as a child that I felt like I always knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then as I got older, that shifted through what people said I should do or what I thought I could achieve. And I've learned that it's kind of brought me back to what I thought my purpose originally was. As a kid, it was to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. I would say that all the time. And then I went to high school and I was terrible at math and chemistry, not good at all. And I just thought, okay, well, it's not going to happen. So I went into something else, but I still ended up coming back to that healing modality just in a different way. And that I became a Reiki practitioner and a coach, also helping people. So when I wanted to heal, I was thinking more along the lines of the traditional medicine and those kinds of things, but you can be a healer in so many different ways. And so I think it's interesting that as a child, I knew more about what I wanted to do than I did as an adult. And I think probably a lot of people will find similar stories.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. I love hearing that. And I hear that all the time with women who want to be of service, right? Like they really deeply want to help people, and they get pigeonholed. Like you kind of got pigeonholed in a certain direction. But holding space in service to others is literally infinite. There's so many different ways that you could do that. And but our school system, like you said, it's very geared in one direction, right? At least in the United States, it's like English, math, right? Just a few things, and there's so many subjects. It's very fascinating that it's only geared on and on these subjects. Um, I have my son actually in a Waldorf school for that reason. It's much more about like imaginative play and nature, and they do some pagan kind of style ritual. It's about learning different techniques and skills with the earth, and and ritual and seasons. So I wanted to put him back into the earth, again, and figure out how this place works. Because if we are going to save the planet and we are going to be solution driven, we need to know how this place operates, on a cellular level again. And that's what's really been missing. So I'm grateful that you came back to your service in the world, and that you get to do what you love doing. That's so important, so important. And I hope that my son, as an example, can do the same thing. It's just like, I don't want to pigeonhole him into anything. It's just like, here's the earth. Now, what do you love doing? What are your gifts? What are your talents? And let's see how to cultivate that and support that, as best as we can.
Yeah, I think that a lot of kids now, we're seeing this in education, the schools, the traditional schools, the way that we're setting them up are really failing them because they don't, almost like they don't feel like they fit in, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. And I don't think, especially kids who are sensitive and have gifts, they really hate the traditional schooling. And I know my own children did not enjoy it. And that's difficult because we're teaching kids for jobs that haven't even been created yet.
Right.
We really truly are. It's like when I was in high school, I didn't know what a social media manager was because it didn't exist.
Right.
And yet that is something that really, in owning your own business, I do that all the time as I manage my own social media. These are things that we don't have courses for right now. Even in high school, like we have a Photoshop class, but it doesn't teach you how to manage social media and do all of these things. I know colleges are doing more of those things now, but those are things they should be doing in high school and helping kids to understand, is this something that interests me, or is this where I have talents? And so our traditional education kind of fails because I don't think we're challenging kids in all directions.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do.
The wisdom that I really gleaned from that statement that you made was, it's almost like, schools are set up traditionally, so they have these curriculums and it continues to kind of go in that direction. It's material that is taught every year, let's say, and it doesn't feel like it's in real time. So it's not as like, you're not getting the skills that are presently needed necessarily, right? Like you were saying, we're not training them. There's jobs in the future that don't even exist now. So how do we train them? Well, it feels like we have to be doing what's in real time with them, right? Which is like life skills, right? It's so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And just the way that things are set up, that classes have to go get approval, and then things have to be the way that you have to do things. It just doesn't listen to be
Yeah.
real time.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, and it's a good insight because, maybe things will change too with what's happened, where so much is going online, that there could be more online opportunities where they can change the curriculum quickly and there's less bureaucracy or what have you. Yeah, but that is really interesting about school.
Well, this has been such an interesting and fascinating conversation. I've loved it.
Oh, it's been great to be with you too.
I want to thank you for being here. So, if people want to work with you, if they want to try doing the breath work, because I know that you were talking about a course that you have coming up in breath work, if they wanted to take the course, or maybe they just want to follow you and learn more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so my website is Nicole Ananda Coaching. And like I said, I'm an intuitive healer. So I do Reiki and breath work and other modalities. There's ways to work with me in that capacity. And then I'm also a women's empowerment coach. And I do have programs that combine Eastern and Western and bridge, just like we were talking about, through the architecture of the chakra system. And that's called Unleash the Priestess. That's on there as well. And then I have a healing arts training. So for people who are interested in becoming healers in the world, if they're interested in getting different modalities under their belt so that they can work as a healing arts professional, my mentor and I created this training. And it's through a place called the Sacred Valley Spiritual Retreat, which is in Mount Shasta. So that information is also with all of these other things too. So I would just say maybe connect with me on Instagram as well, which is Unleash the Priestess, the name of one of my courses. Unleash the Priestess at Instagram. NicoleAnandaCoaching.com is my website. And yeah, I mean, I really would love to mentor people and teach them about breathwork. The breathwork training, it's a training. I call it a healing arts training, but it is also to train as a breathwork facilitator. So you could learn how to do that within groups or individual sessions. And then we teach Reiki, inner child work, shamanism as a method of healing, psychospiritual coaching, and guided imagery and hypnotherapy. So they're all combined in
Wow.
1 year-long program. So it's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. I love it. We're so excited that we created it.
Sounds awesome. Well, I will also have those links for you guys in the show notes too. So if you want to go visit her website or follow her on Instagram, you can simply click on the show note links. They will be right there for you. So if you had any not departing, but parting words
Yeah.
of wisdom for our listeners today, what would that be?
I would say that everything in our life is a choice. And one of the mantras I've always used in my life in terms of how do I make good choices, how do I align with my path, is choice by choice, breath by breath, is choosing if I want to be in fear or choosing if I want to be in love. And that seems to be guiding me quite well these days. And when you do go into fear, not to judge yourself because that exists, but to just simply ask yourself, what is it that I'm in fear around? And maybe you need support. Maybe you reach out for support. Or maybe that's an old condition or an old belief. So how can I heal that so I can move into choosing love? Yeah.
I love that. That is beautiful advice.
Thank
Awesome. Thank
you.
you so much, Nicole, for being here with us today. This was so great.
So this is so awesome to be here with you. I really appreciate it.
And I want to thank all of you for being here with us too. As always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a positive review from wherever you're listening. And the greatest compliment you can pay me is to share this podcast with others. Thank you for those of you who've done that. If you want to follow me on social media, I go live Mondays at 6:30 Central in Facebook, where I do a free card reading. If you show up for the live, I'll pull a card especially for you. And also, if you want to work with me, you can go to my website, melissaoatman.com. There you can see all of the list of services I offer. You can book from my website, and all of my services are done online through Zoom, so you never have to leave the comfort of your own home. Thank you guys so much. As always, I am sending you so much love and light. I hope you have a beautiful day from wherever you're listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.